That sounds pretty good in the ears.
Amazing. Sounds pretty good in the ears.
I can hear it.
Hi, this is Ones to Watch Chef's Choice. I'm Abby Kenna, and today I'm joined by Sierra Spirit. How you doing?
Doing good.
Thanks for coming on our little taste-making talk show.
Thanks for having me.
You're here to do some sessions. Yeah.
Indeed.
And you have a show next week.
I do. Yeah. My debut EP comes out October 10th. So I've got a hometown show October 10th in Oklahoma, and then rolling right back to LA for a show here on the 17th.
A traveling business person.
Businesswoman.
Yeah. We were just talking about how your mother is making a cheese board for your hometown show.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so maternal.
It's so funny. She's like, I'm ordering like a cheese board. Should I bring any other snacks? I'm like, it's a concert. It's like, but
yes.
I appreciate the fervor.
And it's Halloween themed.
Yeah. Sweet little spooky cheese board.
I think that's really perfect.
Yeah, I was like, we can put it in the green room. I'm like, unless you want like...
No, it's for the fans. Cheese board in the pit. So it's you in Oklahoma. Are you having any openers, or is it just like...
Yeah,
okay.
There's this girl, Charlotte Bumgarner, who is from Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Okay.
Really awesome singer-songwriter.
I don't know that name.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
I'm excited.
She's local. She's very well loved in like the Oklahoma scene of music. I'm really excited.
How is the Oklahoma scene of music?
Honestly, really solid.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't like that a ton when I was growing up, but of course, like as I was gearing up to like go to college and like leave my hometown, it got cool.
But of course.
Yeah,
that's
as
how
it
that
does.
Goes. Explain to me like what it's Tulsa, Oklahoma is like where you grew up. What does that look like? Is it city? Is it suburb?
It is like one of the only like major like metropolitan cities. So there's like Tulsa and Oklahoma City, and everything else is kind of just like there.
Just there.
It's there.
It's a good way to describe it, sure. I love that. And do you go home often?
Now that I'm doing music full time, I've gotten to go home more than I ever have, which is so nice.
That's very nice. Yeah, we were just talking about the beauty of Connecticut.
Connecticut. Yeah, that's been my home for the last like 4.5 years.
I love it, honestly. I used to take the Amtrak up from New Jersey to Boston where I went to school, and I loved passing through Connecticut.
She's got her
She's got charm.
She's got her charm.
Yeah, I was a Gilmore Girls fan growing up. Like, I love my Connecticut.
It's so funny. When I left Oklahoma, there were a lot of my friends that were like, Connecticut. They were like Gilmore Girls? Like, yeah, I was like, yeah, absolutely.
That is the defining factor.
Pretty much.
Well, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah.
I'm excited to go through a little 3-course meal of your music. And to start, I would love to know if listeners had never heard your music before, what's the first song you would tell them to listen to?
Ooh. I'd probably say it'd probably be my first single that came from this EP, which was Ghost. It just like did a lot of great things for me. Like I got some playlisting, and that's how my label found me and how I kind of started working under them.
Yeah.
I think it's just like a good balance, like really in the middle of like kind of what my sound is right now.
Okay.
Kind of the extremes of more like folk Americana and then like indie singer-songwriter. I think it like hits like right in the middle.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved listening to your discography because you really do like have those moments where you lean all the way into like the Americana like rootsy sound.
Yeah.
And then the like Phoebe Bridgers, Ethel Cain. And that's definitely like a good middle ground.
Yeah. I think it was like I said, I think this EP was a lot about kind of just figuring out and defining my sound and kind of hitting either extreme and then finding those spots in the middle.
Yeah. Well, tell me about like what Ghost is about. How did that song happen?
I wrote that song. That was probably one of the first songs that I had ever written, and that was years before I started releasing music. This was probably 3 or 4 years ago that I like kind of had like written down the bones of this track. Mm-hmm. But really just about kind of being in those weird little relationships, especially when you're living in the middle of nowhere and kind of just settling for what's there and then kind of evolving into that anger, like point of acceptance and being like, I would truly rather like walk down the highway home than like be in the car with this person for another second.
Yeah.
And kind of just like that uncontrollable like disgust that comes with like actually realizing who someone is and like the amount of time that they've wasted.
Yeah, that's very gutting, but also like I think a very familiar feeling.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, but it's nice to like hear that somebody else has also felt that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like weird to start really like writing about like the hard and like very vulnerable stuff just because it feels like it's just like, I mean, still even like relatively taboo, but
Sure.
chances are, you know, like 90% of the people that are listening have also like gone through that.
Totally. I mean, I hear this like so often from artists that they'll be very afraid to put something into writing. And then the second people hear it, they're like, oh, I felt that, but I've been afraid to say it. So it's like someone needs to take the step.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it might have to be you, but that's also like liberating.
Yeah. It's like, unfortunately, like kind of grief and heartbreak is like such a universal feeling, like even 100%. More so than kind of the more uppity stuff.
Yeah, totally. Well, if you wrote that like 3 or 4 years ago, how did like the writing journey and the artist journey happen?
So I started working on this project February of last year, of 2023. But I was so green and new to writing that it was like, it felt right to start with what I knew the best and starting actually like bringing that track to life, because I kind of had it in my head for years, like what I wanted it to sound like and what I wanted it to be.
Even before you like knew that you wanted to be an artist?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's like a huge reason that I learned guitar and like picked up an instrument, because I felt so stuck. Like I had all of these ideas, but I didn't quite have the capacity to like bring them to life in the way that I wanted to.
Yeah.
So during quarantine, I started learning guitar, and I was like, I want to start with something that I really understand, like sonically and rhythmically, and I think it would make it a lot easier for me to learn, because I'm also left-handed. So I wanted to be able to play right-handed so I could be anywhere and pick up a guitar and like play and not have to. So I learned to play guitar by playing through Phoebe Stranger in the Alps.
That'll do it.
Yeah, front to back, over and over until it just like made sense. And then it really clicked for me that writing was something that I was now like capable of in a fuller capacity.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how much learning an instrument will teach you about like rhythm and just like pulling together something into this like full, very rich like body of work.
Yeah. What did it look like before that? Were you just like basing it off like melodies and like lyrics? Yeah.
So like I had things that I would like voice memoing and kind of just had like these little like bits, and I call it my like chunks folder. So I've got like all like the little like stanzas and chunks, and then like melodic ideas that I would kind of just like hold on to until I felt like I had the capacity to make it what I wanted to. Just like I grew up, my family were all like athletes, and so they were like supportive in the best way they knew how. And my mom, you know, like got me in piano lessons when I was young, and just like as much as it like wasn't their thing, they like absolutely loved supporting me through all of that. But I'd always kind of been a writer, but you know, growing up indigenous, I wasn't seeing people that looked like me on, you know, television or in movies or like on the MTV Countdown on the radio. So it never really felt like it was like an achievable possibility. It felt way more like a dream. You know, like when kids are like, it felt on the same field of saying that I wanted to be like an astronaut or like a doctor.
Yeah. That's really beautiful that you were able to just like make you the dream for other people as well.
Yeah. It's like I didn't see a space for myself, so I had to make it.
Yeah. Which is, I'm sure, frustrating.
Definitely.
Because you didn't get that like role model that made it seem like it was possible for you.
Yeah. But if anything, that feel like it makes it like that much more gratifying is that I was able to kind of begin to create that space for myself.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
How does your indigenous heritage sort of like factor into your music now and like your artist identity too?
Yeah, a huge part of indigenous culture is storytelling. Like my grandmother spent a lot of time with her growing up, and we'd go to the reservation. She was the first generation to move off of the reservation, so my dad was the first generation to be born off of the reservation.
Oh wow. Yeah.
But storytelling is such a huge part of the culture, and she was always such like an incredible storyteller. Like she just had this way to like really draw you in, and it was just like you'd become like so enamored with listening to what she had to say. And that's how I love to write. When I'm coming into a session or when I'm like starting working on a song, I think of like the whole story and kind of like tell the story, and I'm like, how do I condense this down into like 3 minutes?
Yeah, that makes so much sense, like based on the sounds of your music too. Like Phoebe Bridgers, Ethel Cain, like just Americana and like country music in general, we're always talking about how those are like so rooted in storytelling.
Absolutely.
But that also was like your childhood.
Yeah.
Like how you bonded with your grandmother.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge reason that I fell in love with music through those like story-driven albums, you know, like Stranger in the Alps, like listening with all of this like environmental like sonic elements, like you really feel like you are like there and kind of walking through these rooms and these buildings and these places that she's painting. And I think Ethel Cain's like last album is probably one of the most incredible story-driven albums that I've ever listened to. Like it almost feels like you're listening to like an audiobook or like the track to a movie. Like it's just so
100%
cohesive and flowing.
Yeah, I will like I've always tried to have that like concept mind, but I'll never understand how she was able to just like form this character and fully embody it. It's like
it's insane. It's like writing a movie script, honestly. Like truly. She created this whole world.
Yeah. Otherworldly, and like Scott Street, I'll never get over the sounds at the end. Like that.
Yeah. Oh. Like I remember where I was and like what I was doing when I like heard that song for the first time. And that's one of those that I would probably give like anything to go back and listen to that album and that like track specifically for the first time.
Wow. Now I know. Yeah. I'm like thinking about where I heard it for the first time. Really beautiful. Well, I would love to know, like, moving away from Ghost, what feels like the best representation of like where you are now in this EP era that we're stepping into?
I'd probably say I think my favorite track and what like really feels like very true to my heart is the track that I released a couple months ago. It's I'll Be Waiting, like Pug, the song I wrote about my grandmother.
I'll be waiting when everybody's gone. I'll be the only one, and I'll be praying.
That I wrote about like spending her last night with her and kind of just trying to like say this lifetime of thank yous. Like I think for me it has like a lot of the most like genuine emotion, and through like the process of writing that track I kind of went through those stages of grief, things that I had been avoiding. Like I think that's also the magic of music and songwriting is you want to write about what's true and honest, and you know, if you've lived and experienced like love and grief and loss, then you will never run out of things to write about. So writing something that I had truly been like hiding from processing, realizing that through making music that as long as you can make something beautiful out of it, then it won't have been for nothing.
Yeah.
And so I think for me that was probably like the most emotionally honest and kind of leaning more into that folk Americana that I like grew up listening to and absolutely loved. Like I think for me it was a really good middle ground of what I like, paying homage to what I grew up listening to and like the people that developed me.
Yeah. Like your grandmother.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. Wow. How did you, like, as a sort of tribute song, did you start with like lyrics, and now that you like are a guitarist, did you start with guitar? Like, how does the songwriting process look like now at this stage of your artistry?
Yeah, so usually when I come into sessions, like I said, I'll kind of have these ideas, and I went into the room working with this producer, Cameron Hale.
Yeah.
And like I said, like kind of going into that room and just telling this full story. And he has a really great way of kind of really listening and feeling and processing. And then he's like, okay, I think that playing this, this guitar like loop here, he's like, this feels emotionally true, like sonically to what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
And it was really cool, to work with somebody who didn't kind of just like start noodling around. Like they really kind of sat and listened, and then was like, I think this is what this feeling sounds like.
Yeah. Do you often write in sessions now?
Yeah. Like I said, I'm not like the most gifted guitarist. Like I can do enough to kind of write and like start to build stuff out, but I'm really fortunate to be able to work in these sessions with all of these like people that I've really admired or like grown to admire through knowing. And yeah, it's like I've gotten a better sense of melody. Like I think playing an instrument definitely gave me a better like cognitive sense of what goes into
Totally.
structure and like making a good kind of, you know, riff and like center of a track. But usually, yeah, I will kind of like tell the story and then people will kind of just be like noodling around in the room. And then when you hear something that hits, you're like, okay, just loop that and then start kind of building structure from there.
That is really rare though, to have someone who like is willing to sort of take it all in emotionally first and then like, I don't know, like take that pause and be like, okay, what does it sound like to me?
Yeah.
Especially in LA, I feel like the session culture is very like rushed. Like, let's get a song done in 3 hours.
Yeah.
Like that's almost a thing to brag about. Like we did it all in one day.
Yeah.
But to have someone who's willing to like hear the story, especially one as like emotional and personal as that, that's really awesome.
I think that's probably the one off of the CP, maybe even in general, that took the most time. But like, I'm really glad that we took those like 3, 4, 5 days, like over time to really work on it and make it feel exactly how I wanted. Like I'm almost really grateful that the initial like scratch bounce sounded so different from what the final product was, because I think it was just truly about everybody in the room like knew how important it was to me. So we wanted to really just like, it was kind of like annotating a book. Like you really just like rip every little piece up until it all makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's like such a songwriter way to look at it, which is really beautiful. It's like the fast track is not always the best option, and like to have people that aren't going to settle just to like get it done. That's really awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy to feel like when you get in the like just rotation and grind of like getting into sessions where it feels like, okay, we're going to start at 1, we're going to start like tracking vocals by 3, and then like we're out of here by 6, and we better have like 80% of a song done.
That is so much pressure. Like I've never been able to understand how people can like show up to a session being their like authentic self with that sort of framework in mind.
That's like why I think storytelling has been so important to me, because I've always had a lot of trouble, like growing up especially, and still even now I have a ton of anxiety. So I'm definitely still really adjusting to socializing and like connecting with people being such a huge part of my job. Like that's never really something I took into account when I was like, okay, I'm going to be like writing music and sharing all of these things. But then I was like, oh, if I'm going to be writing about things that are honest and true to me, then like people are going to know a lot more about me than I probably would have ever been comfortable with.
Yeah.
Like just like the idea of being known by like people that you never really like chose in a way, like having to be like earnest and honest with people that you're just meeting for the first time, and how scary that it's so important that you let that person see as much of you as you can so they can kind of help you build this whole like world and image.
Right. It's like the thought of being perceived makes you want to hide things more, but like you have to give more so they don't get the wrong perception.
Absolutely. Yeah, like if this person only has 6 hours to like get to know me as well as they can, then I kind of owe it to them and myself to paint like the clearest picture that I can. So that, which like I said, is why it's so important for me coming into a session to start with that story and just really tell everything, and you know, really, like I said, like paint that picture, tell this person like where I was, what I was doing, how I felt, like like that track specifically. I remember like sitting there telling this story, and I was like, I remember like being there in the hospital with her, and I was like the only one that was able to stay the night. So I slept in the waiting room, and it's like by the time I had left the next morning, I had cried so hard that there were like holes in my contacts, like literally like burnt like holes through like my contacts in my eyes. And being able to, like I said, make something so visceral and like so vulnerable about something that was so terrible was so cathartic. Like I said, it was really hard to like sit there and tell this story when it's not something I had thought about for a long time. Like storytelling and songwriting really gave me the opportunity to actually process a lot of things that I had been kind of pushing away.
I was going to ask, does it feel like once you've completed something like that, like you've almost put it behind you? Like obviously you're always going to feel like the grief, but does it sort of wrap it up?
I think it definitely does. Like I said, it's not something that I had ever, you don't realize how much kind of saying something out loud and processing it out loud will make it like actually very real again.
Yeah.
Like, you know, a lot of people kind of sit with grief and they process it mentally and like find their own way through, but really like talking about it really kind of brings that person in that situation to life again in a way. So it's really like, because I never really felt like I got to say goodbye in the way that I wanted to, but like truly kind of bringing her in that moment back to life, it did feel like I was getting the closure that I wanted. And it's like, when I started writing that way and like telling these stories, I was realizing how much like personal growth and healing I was actually going through, because I thought that I had dealt with it. Mm-hmm. But like I said, like saying things out loud like really makes it truly real.
Yeah. That's a really like, I don't know, brave thing to share with people. But I think, again, like an inspirational sort of like opening the door to like, you can feel these things. And yeah. I'm excited to hear the rest of the EP as well. It's called Cointoss. Yeah. Why did you choose that name for it?
So I had a friend in college say something that just really stuck with me. They were kind of talking about how luck is so like, it's so calculated in a way. Like luck feels like luck, but like there's so many like little things and moments that lead up to something that just feels like luck, and there's actually a lot more to attribute it to. But they would tell me that every time they saw a penny face down, they would flip it right side up for the next person to find, because you know, like
you're not supposed to pick it up.
Luck. So he's like, well, if it's not like it wasn't face up for me, then I'll like flip it so the next person has that little like something.
I love that.
It's just everything is so like delicate and fragile, and it could really go one way or another. And I think like this whole EP is kind of about that, like having those like really high and those really low moments, and they always kind of come when you least expect it. And that's kind of just life being waylaid by experiences, because as in control as you try to be, like you really never are.
It's a coin toss. Yeah. That's beautiful. Okay, so for our third track, I want to know like a personal favorite, maybe an unreleased one that's coming up, or just like your favorite off of the EP.
Yeah. So I think, probably one of my favorites, and the last one that's going to be coming out is this track, Easy.
You make me dizzy, you make me sick, you make me hate me, fuck all this. I'm lying out here on an old gravel road where you left me for dead, and now everyone knows that it's easy.
Okay.
Because I said I grew up just so in love with music, because there wasn't an awful lot to do kind of in the middle of Oklahoma. So I'd go to these shows and like I would fall in love with these bands and artists and music in a way that was like, you fall in love at a live show. Like that's why I love shows. Like there could be bands that like maybe I'll never listen to them again, or like maybe I'll listen to them after that, or like hear them differently. Like hearing somebody play their songs live and actually kind of getting that little insight and look into like what they really wrote it about, because when you're listening to music you kind of take on your own meaning, but having those little bits of like very human moments with these artists on stage, like you really fall in love in a different way with music. Like I'd listened to Phoebe Bridgers for years before I got to see her in concert for the first time. I think like late 2017, early 2018, and I didn't get to see her until like 2 years ago, and like I just like bawled through that whole show, because I was like, wow, this is like, I thought that I was like really connected and sitting with this, but I was like, I just connected with this in like a whole different way.
Right. I feel like that's so true too with like music I've listened to on like Spotify and maybe not even liked or felt connected to, and then I see that band randomly and I'm like, oh, I'm in now. It's human, like you said.
Exactly. Yeah, and that song, Easy, that's going to be the last one to come out, I wrote about kind of, I was so enamored with these like people and bands, and I was kind of always falling in and out with, you know, talking to these people that were like never like really around. And just like, you know, chasing the feeling of something that like you're never quite gonna get. And it's like somebody who's always on tour and is like always running around is like, and like they truly probably aren't as invested as you ever think they are. But like I definitely developed this kind of like kicked puppy complex like into my years heading into college, just like really admiring these people, because I think in my way, like I said, I had kind of come to terms with the fact that music was never going to be a career for me. And so I think I was really kind of just chasing that as close as I could get to the taste of the thing that I really wanted. And wrote that track about kind of the heartbreak of investing myself in that world that I never felt I was going to be a part of.
Wow.
And like truly just growing to kind of hate yourself. Like you look in the mirror and you're like, you're being stupid. Like this person is never going to be yours. Like this moment is never going to be what you want it to be.
Right.
And it's like I'm kind of had to, you know, like really look at myself, and I was like, you're going to develop this like permanent kick me sign on your back if you don't like shape up and kind of chase what's better for you rather than kind of chasing the same thing over and over.
Yeah. What a badass track to put on an EP where like you have now like started to live that moment.
Yeah. And it's like, I realized, I was like, wow, I don't know why I ever thought that that was going to fulfill me in any way.
Yeah. That's cool. What are like the sonic qualities of this one?
I'd say kind of like it reminds me a little bit of like Motion Sickness. Like I love like a really like kind of upbeat like instrumental track, and then you just add in those like really crushing vocals. Like I love something that sounds happy when you're like listening, but then when you like listen, you realize that it's like kind of heavy.
Yeah, like they have two lives.
Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome. Where is it on the EP, like track list wise?
I think it's like pretty close to the bottom. So I think it goes really from like kind of like the more indie end of things, and then it kind of gets closer to that like folk Americana in the middle, and then like kind of like right back down. So it's kind of this like up the hill kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that journey.
Yeah.
Cool. Wow, I can't wait. And that's this Friday.
Yeah, October 10th.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Well, I have a couple of closing questions for you. If you could describe the EP as a candle scent, what would it smell like?
Ooh. Like I said, I spent a ton of time on the reservation with my grandmother, and just the smell of like wet earth. Like, you know, like very like musky, like earthy scent.
Yeah.
Smell like moss and like grass. Like I remember exactly what that area like smells like when I'd go with my grandma, like growing up there. And I wish I had like a better way to describe it, but I think just like the smell of like earth.
Yeah. I can like picture it in the context of my New Jersey suburb where I grew up, what that ground smells like. It's a good homey smell.
Yeah.
Love that. I would also love to know what your favorite sound is right now. That's not like a music sound, like a life sound.
Ooh. I think I've really grown to love. I love when you're driving and it's raining like really hard, and then you go under a bridge and everything's like silent for like half a second.
Yeah.
And then rolling right back into just this like very like loud.
That's so cinematic.
Yeah, my favorite noise is like the break in like a rainstorm.
Okay, songwriter. Hello. My very final question is, I would love to know who your ones to watch are. Who are you listening to that I should be listening to?
Oh my goodness.
You said Charlotte?
Charlotte Baumgartner.
Okay, yeah.
Incredible singer-songwriter. Yeah, if you love like Phoebe Bridgers, like Fiona Apple, Ethel Cain, like she's incredible.
Yeah.
She plays live, sometimes with a cellist or like a full band. Like it's just like such a beautiful, intimate experience to watch her play. She's incredible. I'd say probably my other ones to watch. Oh, it's so hard to pick.
I know, right?
Carly Hansen.
Oh.
Love Carly Hansen.
I feel like I know the name, but what track should I start with?
I'd start with 608. 608
Okay.
by Carly Hansen is just this. It reminds me a lot of like the Japanese house with a little more of that like kind of gothic element. I'd say it's like a good mix between like Ethel Cain and the Japanese house.
Love that. Like, can't go wrong anywhere. Amazing. Okay, I have homework. Good. Well, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm excited to see how everything goes with the EP. I'll be at the show.
Yeah, dude. October 17th here in LA.
What venue again?
It's with Make Out Music.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yes. Oh, the best.
Awesome.
Okay, yay. Well, once again, this is Once to Watch Chef's Choice. I'm Abby Kenna, and this is Sierra Spirit. Listen to Cointoss. Yay.
Yay.